Welcome to For Good Measure, an interview series celebrating diverse composers and other creative artists. I'm Nanette McGuinness, Artistic Executive Director of Ensemble for these times. In this week's episode, we continue our conversation with Megan Chartier. Do you have things coming up that you'd like to share with us?
Well, so one of the things that I certainly do, but I think one of the things outside of performance that, as we're recording this in the summer, as we're approaching the summer, and what oftentimes happens in the summer when the season has, is quiet for a few months, is my illustration work and art kind of take over for a little bit until the next season rolls around, and so I have a couple exciting things with art that are coming up where I'm illustrating a cello technique book. I've got a couple other, I guess it'll be published before this gets posted, but I'm doing the July cover of the July 2025 cover of the Dmitry Shostakovich, the DSCH journal. And so
Nice.
that is currently on my desk. And a couple other interesting, just my art persona is Incremezzo. And so by itself, Incremezzo has some fun projects, hopefully over the summer before this gets posted. A drawing that I'm doing called Curse of the Ninth that is all about, there's all these very nerdy Easter eggs all throughout it. And it's kind of like a Victorian poster, almost like a vintage sheet music, Victorian design. Hopefully that will be done by the time, because I've been working on this thing for 2 years. So
Wow,
hopefully it'll
wow.
be done by the time this gets posted. So those are the exciting things, outside of music. But of course, we're recording our album, which will be done, this time too. That's exciting to come up. Yeah, and just excited to see for what next season brings, musically.
Yeah, it's true. We know what we're doing, but we haven't announced it yet.
Exactly.
Now, we will have by time this airs, but that's
Right,
fine. Um,
right.
I'm curious. Curse of the Ninth. You mean Beethoven's Ninth?
Oh, do you not know The Curse of the Ninth? Do
Well, maybe. I
it
mean, is it
it's
the book?
it's no. It's not real. I mean, it's something that Mahler came up with because he saw Beethoven.
Yes. Okay.
Okay,
Yes.
he died after his ninth, and so there became this like fear of death,
Right.
and that the Ninth Symphony was going to be the last thing you'd ever write. And of course, if you actually go through and study these things, it's totally a hoax to sensationalize death. But I think that's fascinating, and so
No,
um,
I had forgotten about that because there's also Schubert and there's Beethoven and
And so there's exactly. So I'm looking at it. So we have Mahler, Bruckner, von
yep.
Williams, Dvorak, Schubert, and Beethoven. Those are so it's kind of like a clock, and the
Right.
clock will strike at their deaths. And so um, it's
Right. I'd
I
forgotten
I
all about
love things
that.
like this. Yeah, and if you actually, I mean, it's all did these composers actually think about it? Probably not all of them, and some of them, if you were actually to properly number and properly investigate, yeah, like Vaughan Williams is, we're stretching a little bit, but he is part of the myth. And I think that the fun thing to play up with this drawing is that it doesn't matter if they knew or they didn't, it still contributed to this fear of death, and it's something that we still talk about. And so there's this darkness that comes through, and then each of the ninth symphonies have interesting elements of these fears, especially with Mahler. Just that there's so many things at the end of Mahler's life to put in, and so there's all these. I mean, it's the reason why it's taken me 2 years isn't because it's taking me 2 years to really draw it. Design it, maybe partly I've been doing other projects and
Hmm.
practicing, a lot of practicing and performing in between. But there are all these fun things like um, Bruckner idolized Schubert and Beethoven, so he's placed beneath them, and he uh, said that he really wanted to be buried underneath a specific organ, and so there's a specific organ at the top, and then it's pulling on different sheet music, like vintage sheet music covers, and the designs, and to there's just a lot of symbolism, and so
I get that.
the amount of research to make sure it's absolutely perfect, and that I don't want almost anyone to be able to see all of the things. I want you to stare at it for years before you understand a lot of the references.
It sounds very somehow gory, and figurative.
I mean, it'll look nice. It'll look dark, but it won't necessarily feel that way unless you do know the Curse of the Ninth, and that's
Right,
kind
right.
of the yeah.
I don't mean gory as in bloody. I mean the
Yeah.
artist.
Yeah. Yeah.
It sounds cool. That's great. And
Mhm.
I have to tell you, as a soprano, when I first heard your name of your Instagram and your artistic alter ego of intermezzo, I immediately thought, oh, is she a mezzo? And then I was like, oh no, it's intermezzo.
Yeah. Yeah, like intermezzo. So intermezzo,
Exactly, exactly.
ink ink is my my main medium, and so it's just the thing that happens in between all of the performing I'm doing, which is why in COVID I was very prolific.
Yeah, right.
Pumping things out, and I ended up, actually it took me 2 years. It was going to take me 1 year, but I did an entire deck of cards with composers, but
They're great.
it's
Yes.
all classical music, illustration, and design. So it always gets squeezed in between performances, which is honestly nice because musicians oftentimes, when you have a big performance, you struggle. I struggle. Many people struggle with that kind of
Let
the
down.
loss of energy, exactly. And so this fills in the gaps. I'm able to. Um, I usually know exactly. I have pieces that are attached to certain performances. So I know, and it's not necessarily intentional, but the day after a performance, I usually get to work, just I need to put energy somewhere. And so those performances are kind of burned into those pieces.
Hmm. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I remember as a young singer when I would do a role and then there would be like this wasteland till the next role, and it was like
Hmm.
and then eventually things stack up and all of a sudden you're too busy, and then you have a different
Right. Right.
set of issues to deal with. No, but I should point out for those listening that you made your mezzo debut for us
I
this
did.
past. We
I
gave you a
did.
piece. You did it wonderfully. We gave you a piece for singing cellist,
Yes.
and you did great. It was
Yeah.
wonderful.
It, I love singing in my car, but I had never sung in front of outside of my sight singing class. But
Yeah.
that's yeah.
Well, it's funny, Abby, the cellist who you're swapping places with basically,
Hmm.
and who does our social media, she actually sings and has sung in
Oh,
choirs and
yeah,
so forth. So we had not thought about singing cellist before her, but
yeah.
since then we put that in. But I hadn't been aware that a singing cellist was a thing, but it is. There are a lot of pieces for that.
Yeah. I'm very open to that. My husband just joined a choir, so
Ah,
he's been very excited to teach me all about how to. Uh, yeah, no, but it's been very interesting, and I mean, it works so well. I mean, in theory, we had spoken about this before, that cellists tend to have a lot of tension here, which is
they
funny
do.
because we don't play with those muscles, and so why does it go there? It's because where else will it go? A lot of people will have tension in their feet or their jaw,
Right.
and their neck and things like that, the places that are not, your cello.
Engaged. Right.
Yeah, and so I think it was kind of an interesting, like, take out the interesting element of hearing and being musical, because you're thinking about these two directions of sound that have to kind of like meet, and you have to tune and think about how they combine, but just from a physical technical perspective of releasing certain things, and that piece was difficult because there were a lot of big bowed arpeggios that just kept ripping, and so how do I keep that rhythm going and take a breath that will probably be much longer than than the cue you'd have in your arm, and keeping the timing independent. That was tricky.
I think it sounds, even without this description, I think it sounds intensely challenging to do both things well, because they are very much like patting
Right.
your head and rubbing your stomach.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah, no, you did it beautifully. And for those who are curious, it's a fabulous piece by Lancelotti,
Hmm.
and a contemporary woman composer, and we will be doing more by her this coming season. We have at least one
Mhm.
piece of hers on the program.
Mhm.
Well, thank you so much for joining us and telling us all that's going on. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to For Good Measure, and a special thank you to our guest, Megan Chartier, for joining us today. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to our podcast by clicking on the subscribe button and support us by sharing it with your friends, posting about it on social media, and leaving us a rating and a review. To learn more about E4TT, our concert season online and in the Bay Area, or to make a tax-deductible donation, please visit us at www.e4tt.org. This podcast is made possible by grants from the California Arts Council, the San Francisco Arts Commission, Grants for the Arts, and generous donors like you. For Good Measure is produced by Nanette McGuinness and Ensemble for These Times and designed by Brennan Stokes, with special thanks to co-producer and audio engineer Stephanie M. Neumann. Remember to keep supporting equity in the arts and tune in next week for Good Measure.